O beloved God harmony, come forth. O beloved God harmony, come forth. O beloved God harmony, come forth into our temples, into our sanctuaries. We thank you for your presence with us, O beloved God harmony, as we feel thy presence with us. And we know that God harmony gave very few dictations, it is said by our beloved messenger. Volume 41, number 47, toward the end of Elizabeth Clare Prophet, our beloved Guru Ma's ministry before she retired, and a year or so after this, she gave a teaching before a short dictation, I think probably the last dictation by God harmony in 1998. And it was called Our Assignment from God Harmony, where she pulled together the teachings of God harmony over the years. And she said, first of all, who is God harmony? God harmony's answer is, I am the living flame of harmony. All people in the earth require my ministrations. In 1978, he said, I am the harmony of the origin of cycles in your being, and I carry the vibration of the absolute harmony of a cosmos. Without that harmony, beloved ones, the entire cosmos itself would collapse. And she said in this presentation, God harmony does not come frequently into our midst. Therefore, his coming is not to be taken lightly. You can be sure that he is coming because we need him. So for a moment, let's go back to the first principles as we anticipate God harmony's dictation, which it was a very short dictation. And Mother asked us if we knew that a dictation is an initiation. And dictations are given for our enlightenment, but they are also given for our initiation. So she said, thus, what is an initiation? It's a conferment of light and is also a process whereby a master comes to transfer greater light to you for your fuller integration with God. It is a process by which your consciousness is moved forward, a process by which you can make greater spiritual progress. And those of you who had the great fortune of being in the presence of these dictations live when they were first given, know the feeling and know the force field that was built before any dictation was delivered. And sometimes dictations were not delivered because the force field had not been created to deliver the message. She goes on to say, whenever the masters speak, they bring an acceleration of light, and they work with us at inner levels. Like a strong shot of energy, this increase of light is given to us for our assistance, our integration with God. But we have to do our part. We have to keep our equilibrium in the presence of greater light. We must hold on to that light and energy, and to get the most out of it, we need to assimilate it. So she says, in a sense, the initiation of every dictation is, can you hold your harmony when greater light comes to you? Or will you break your harmony and therefore lose the light and the initiation? She says, every time you hear a dictation, you try to identify the initiation the master is offering you. For when you are aware of the initiation, you can guard against that which opposes it. With the coming of God harmony, we should ask ourselves, why do we need the initiation of harmony at this time? I asked myself that question when I was preparing and thinking about doing this teaching today. The word harmony continually came up. And I must say, I need lots of work on harmony at times. And if we are to be honest, we probably all do. And there are ways that harmony is worked on, the masters with us. It can be through our thoughts, our emotions, and lastly, our words, our speech, the throat chakra. So Mother says each of us has to answer that question personally. And so this is our assignment from God Harmony today. And let me go on and elaborate on some of these teachings as we go forth. She says, I do know that we will at all need greater harmony in order to deal with planetary changes. And this was 22 years ago, 23 years ago. So why do we need God Harmony? Another thing to be aware of, she says, is that when God Harmony comes with his intensified light of harmony, that light will inevitably expose the inharmony that exists in our own personal world. But what exactly is harmony and what is inharmony? God Harmony gives us a very simple definition. He says harmony is oneness with God, attunement with God, ever beholding the face of the Father as the angels do. It is happiness in the simple manifestations of nature and the sharing of love and the creating of beauty. Every war and every battle may be won by you by the science of absolute God Harmony. He says, harmony is the true source of everlasting life. It is the principal quality of the tree of life. Think of this, beloved. When you are fully in harmony with God, you are immortal, for God is immortal. Thus, harmony is the price you must pay for your ascension. And she goes on to explain what is inharmony. Commenting on the high level of inharmony in the earth, God Harmony said in 1995, what is this inharmony? I will tell you one major factor, and that is the absence of the Divine Mother Omega in the earth. Those of earth are like children, one and all, crying for their Divine Mother in heaven, crying out to be nurtured, to be cared for. And she does not come, and she does not come, and they become angry. Yet they have chased her out of the earth long, long ago. As in Kabbalah, when the mother is perceived as being in exile in the earth, so the mother is exiled in heaven. For the inharmony of her children universally does not allow her to enter in. The mother said, so great is this inharmony that during this same dictation, when God Harmony actually placed harmony over the earth from the great central sun, from his causal body, he experienced immense pain. He said, I do this, beloved, for the sake of light bearers who have been, who are, and who are to come. Inharmony can even cause a deceleration of the threefold flame. God Harmony told us that wherever energy is tied up in knots of self-deception, of dissonance, of selfishness, of hatred, all of these manifestations, including anxiety itself, will cause a deceleration of that which is God Harmony within the very core of the threefold flame itself. Thus, when the momentum of dissonance becomes too great, the top of the threefold flame cannot spin. And when its three plumes of differing heights out of balance, it cannot spin, and therefore the resurrection fires do not glow. When we think of harmony, we first think of music. Harmony, if you're a musician, you know about music theory and how that works. And singing, if you've ever sung in a choir or a quartet or a duo, you know what harmony is, and you know if someone is not singing on the right pitch or the right key, it becomes rather disturbing. We had that experience. We've had to maintain our harmony when someone else perhaps unknowingly was not. And harmony in music is the sound of two or more notes heard simultaneously. In practice, this broad definition can also include some instances of notes sounded one after the other, like a run on the piano, as if the consecutive sounded notes call to mind the notes of a familiar chord. And actually, harmony, melody, and rhythm can exist without harmony. And by far, the greatest part of the world's music is non-harmonic. And we know that from the Indian and Chinese music. It's mostly highly sophisticated musical styles, consists basically of unharmonized melodic lines and their rhythmic organization. In only a few instances of folk and primitive music are simple chords specifically cultivated. So harmony in the Western sense is a comparatively recent invention, having a rather limited geographic spread. It arose less than a millennium ago in the music of Western Europe and is embraced today only in those musical cultures that trace their origins to that area. So an interesting part about music and the Ascended Masters, there's a lot of interesting things, but this particular situation with harmony is that the concept of harmony and harmonic relationships is not an arbitrary creation. It's based on certain relationships among musical tones that the human ear accepts almost reflexively and that are also expressible through elementary scientific investigation. So brings in the 6th century BC Greek philosopher Pythagoras, which was an embodiment of our beloved Kuthumi. And in one of his famous experiments, a stretched string was divided by simple arithmetical ratios, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and plucked. And by this means, he demonstrated that the intervals or distances between the tones that the string sounded before and after it was divided are the most fundamental intervals the ear perceives. So if you have a piano and you go, they found that there were actually 3 intervals, the octave, the 5th, and the 4th. And if you have had music theory and you know the circle of fifths and how to write songs and how to change the key, if you just go to a piano and you start on a C and you go to a C, you know that's an octave on the white keys. You go on the white keys from a C to a G, that is a 5th. And then a C to an F is a 4th. So these three intervals are the basics to Western music. So it is interesting to know about our beloved Kuthumi as Pythagoras. If you don't know, he lived about the time of Daniel in the Old Testament. And that was about 582 to 507 BC. He was known as the fair-haired Samian, who was regarded as the son of Apollo. And as a youth, Pythagoras conferred freely with priests and scholars and eagerly seeking scientific proof of the inner law revealed to him in meditation upon Demeter, the mother of the earth. It's interesting that God Harmony, who I will tell you, the cosmic being God Harmony, is also known as the great tenor. And God Harmony represents the cosmic consciousness of God's harmony and the law of God Harmony as it manifests in music, in science, in art, in society, and in the 4 lower bodies of man. And God Harmony serves on the 6 o'clock line of the cosmic clock, the line of God Harmony with Serapis Bey. And this is the line also of the Divine Mother. So we have this correlation with Pythagoras, our beloved Kuthumi, in that lifetime with our beloved God Harmony. So Pythagoras, his quest for the great synthesis of truth led him to Palestine, Arabia, India, and finally to the temples of Egypt, where he won the confidence of priests of Memphis. And he was gradually accepted in the mysteries of Isis at Thebes. And when Asian conqueror Cambyses launched a savage invasion of Egypt in 529 BC, Pythagoras was exiled to Babylon, where the prophet Daniel still served as the king's minister. And here it was the rabbis revealed to him the inner teachings of the I am that I am given to Moses. And the Zoroastrian Magi tutored him in music, astronomy, and the sacred science of invocation. And after 12 years, Pythagoras left Babylon and founded a brotherhood of initiates at Crotona, a busy Dorian seaport in southern Italy. The city of the elect was a mystery school of the Great White Brotherhood. And that it was there in Crotona that he carefully selected men and women who pursued a philosophy based upon the mathematical expression of universal law, illustrated in music and in the rhythm and harmony of a highly disciplined way of life. And after a 5-year probation of strict silence, Pythagorean mathematicians progressed through a series of initiations, developing the intuitive faculties of the heart, whereby the son or daughter of God may become, as Pythagoras's golden verses state, a deathless God, divine, mortal, no more. And so it was this initiation of silence where we know that many of the masters have commented that the greatest harmony is actually silence. So going on a little bit more about our beloved God Harmony, prior to his ascension, thousands of years ago, God Harmony had been embodied as a blacksmith, a mechanic, and an astronomer. It's interesting that he was a blacksmith, as his keynote is the anvil chorus, which is, of course, blacksmiths hammering out in the early morning of that particular opera, where that came from. Harmony devoted himself in many incarnations to the flame of Mother as the flame of her harmonious love for her children. He attained to the cosmic consciousness, the God consciousness of harmony, and so became known as God Harmony. Since his victory, he has rendered great service at inner levels and drawn a tremendous momentum of the quality of God Harmony, a crystal flame that reflects the 7 rays in harmonious interaction. And God Harmony explains that harmony is a key to our progress on the path. And so today, this assignment we have from our beloved God Harmony is to work on all of the rays. And we will be doing that at the very end of this teaching this morning. He says that no matter how much the saints call for more light, that which can be given must be adjusted according to the cosmic law as to what you might say the traffic will bear. He wants us to understand how the ascended masters make karma in delivering unto an unascended Chela more light than that Chela can hold in balance. I remember an instance about probably about 33 years ago in Indianapolis when my husband and I at the time had a study group, and Guru Ma, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, was doing a stump tour through the Midwest. And so we arranged to have her come to the city, and she gave her presentation, her teaching, and a dictation by the Mahachohan. And after that, she invited people to come to the stage to have the Emerald Matrix blessing. And that's where she placed the Emerald Matrix crystal on their foreheads. So people filed up onto the stage, and I remember getting my blessing and sitting back down in the front row. And I was watching as a young woman came up to her, and Mother kind of beckoned her to come a bit closer so she could speak to her. And she asked her something. I didn't know what it was, but she did not give her the blessing. And after the blessing, and she went to talk to all of us in a separate room, all the keepers in the area, she told us that she was told not to give this young woman the Emerald Matrix blessing because it would have overwhelmed her, and possibly that the woman was pregnant. It could have caused a disturbance in the pregnancy. So this is what God Harmony is talking about, that you cannot just pour all of each line of the cosmic clock, all of the God's power or God's love at once. If you have imbalances in that area, it has to be given like medicine in an incremental fashion. Saint Germain had something to say on the Saint Germain on Alchemy book on harmony, chapter 3 on love. And he said in the beginning of this chapter, this love is also the motivating power behind all angelic action. Therefore, those who would draw very close to the angelic hosts, that they might receive their protection, radiance, and blessing, will be most wise to keep harmonious at all times and to shun all forms of human discord. And he says, harmony is the fulfilling. There's part of this chapter on love. Harmony is the fulfilling of the law of love. In the holy name of love, we would speak in a practical manner, says Saint Germain, on the great need for keeping and maintaining one's personal harmony, not only in one's feelings, but also in one's thoughts. For harmony is not only the law of love, it is the epitome of love, the sign of love's true conquering heroes. And an excerpt here, Saint Germain goes on to say, and in many cases, unless, of course, the feelings are motivated by purest love, this is not the fulfillment of the law of harmony. Rather, it is very often a compromise made by the soul, caught between the mental and feeling worlds. And he talks about when the thought desires go to the right and the feelings pull to the left, and sometimes the feelings win out and the thought by rationalization will gravitate in that direction. And he says it can result in that peace without honor, which, because it is not based on principle, cannot provide the permanent solution to the problem. And as I was studying this, I was thinking about the word peace and the word harmony, and people sometimes use them interchangeably. And indeed, some of the masters do that. I was thinking about Jesus in the temple when he turned over the tables of the money changers. And I thought to myself, well, was that being out of alignment, as we say? And what do the teachings say about that situation? And we know that sometimes to maintain what we call harmony, another expression that we might use is going along to get along. Have you ever done that? Have you not said anything about something you felt very strongly about that you felt was not ethical, not honest, and not the truth, because you were afraid of causing a stir, of causing an issue, or what we call disharmony? And is it really disharmony to state from the righteous indignation of God, as Jesus did in the temple, when he went into the temple and he had been in there before and he'd seen them selling the pigeons and the doves and the sheep and exchanging the money? It was kind of a currency exchange. And that's where people came from all over, and they had different kinds of denominations of coins. It's like going to a different country. They had to exchange it for the local currency. But in some cases, I understand that the ones who were the poorest of the poor were charged an extra interest or tax because they're the ones that brought the pigeons or the doves, because that was less expensive than giving away sheep, the ones that didn't have as much abundance. And so they were the ones being charged. I'm understanding from reading about the history of this, and that was what Jesus was really saying, was that this was an action, to a preliminary action before, they started to really notice him and to come after him. And it was part of God's plan for this situation, to pass this initiation, to go through what he did. And we know that beloved Peace and Aloha had something to say about what you do. What's the difference between those who what if you came into a store, and you see this happening today? You see people looting. You see them going into stores and breaking windows and stealing great amounts of merchandise and getting away with it. I was reading about a law in California where you can steal up to $950 worth of merchandise and they won't do anything. It's outrageous. So we're not talking about Jesus doing anything like that. There was a purpose for the reason why he did this. And Peace and Aloha said in 1976, and June 12th, I came not to send peace, but a sword. He said, so Peace and Aloha came through the Prince of Peace to overturn the money changers in the temple of God. The money changers, Peace and Aloha said, are the imitators of the great integrator of life, the Buddha. They change and interchange the energy of greed, selfishness, and lust. Now the Elohim overturn their tables, and we take those who would become worthy chelas, seizing them in the grips of the consciousness of an Elohim, turning them upside down and inside out, shaking them through and through. The Elohim demand action of their chelas because all of elemental life is crucified by your inaction and your refusal to clear the body of the mother, to clear the land, the air, the sea, the rivers, and the waters. You who have demonstrated against war, and this was given at the time when there were peace marches, now demonstrate against pollution and make your cries heard across the land. Make those who govern be ashamed to be called the representatives of the people until they have disregarded the blackmail and the payoffs of the large corporations to continue to pollute and to manage energy that belongs only to the mother within you. End of that quote. We also know that, as I said, all of the masters work with the flame of God harmony. And the cosmic clock, if you are not familiar with the teaching of the cosmic clock, that would be another sermon. Just know that if you look at decree number 6.04, round the clock protection, you can see each line of the clock and what qualities of God there are and what perversions of the qualities of God there are. And this is what God Harmony is talking about us working on. And specifically, our beloved Maha Chohan has a special teaching and initiation that he gives. And I got this from Climb the Highest Mountain, book 1 on page 427. And it says, harmony is the very first lesson in self-mastery taught by the Maha Chohan to the neophyte class in his retreat. Harmony in thought, which begets the harmony of controlled action. Harmony in the emotions, which begets harmony in the spoken word. And once certain basic exercises and the principles of harmony are mastered, he then explains that the disciple is responsible for harmonizing not only the present flow of energy in his world, but also the flow of the past. This he is taught to do by systematically reclaiming by the authority of the Christ all discordant energies that he has allowed to pass through the nexus of his consciousness since his fall from grace. And they go on to say, although this may at first seem an overwhelming task, the Maha Chohan quickly assures them that with God and with a correct knowledge of his laws, all things are indeed possible. If you would move a mountain, you must begin with the first shovelful of earth. And if you would progress on the path, you must begin with the first erg of misqualified energy. You must begin to harmonize your life by an invocation to the sacred fire, that the Lord may enter your being and there reestablish the Holy of Holies of his flaming consciousness. There can be no harmony with life, no inner or outer peace until a man's debts to God and his fellow man are paid. Since these debts are always made in moments of uncontrol, the attainment of God control through God harmony is a way of life at the Maha Chohan's retreat. The end of that quote from Climb the Highest Mountain. I'd like to read just a little bit more here from another source, which I found interesting, because when we think of harmony, we think of beauty and doing God's will and everything is happy. But the word harmony also means to come together in some cohesion. So a group of people, a group of cells, a group of electrons in atoms and cells, they all have some kind of use with harmony, because that means they're of one mind and one purpose and one focus. So from a book that Mother gave, it's a series of sermons that she gave called Fire from Heaven, the chapter on miracles in Jerusalem, conversion of the Holy Spirit in the New Jerusalem. That is the name of the book. Mother had a chapter on the first Christian martyr, which was Stephen. And you know, if you read in the book of Acts, chapter 5, verse 12, we talk about the healing of the apostles after Jesus had ascended. And by the hands of the apostles were many signs and wonders wrought among the people. Taking a little bit more from this chapter, she says that time and time again, we see that the testimony of the book of Acts is preceded by the statement, they were all with one accord in one place. They were all of one accord in one place. They had the harmony of the Holy Spirit, and that harmony was necessary for the release of power. Harmony within our members, our heart, our organs, our physical body, tethering to our feelings, our minds, our memories. This harmony of being, this whole consciousness of God, is a key to power. Now, how did the apostles do their healing? How were they able to do that? Why can't everyone do the healing as Jesus did? She says, now the apostles were in harmony with the Spirit, and they had the harmony of the flow of spirit and matter. And in that harmony did the healings take place in Jerusalem. And from Acts chapter 5, 13 through 16, and of the rest dared no man join himself to them, but the people magnified them. And believers were the more added to the Lord, multitudes both of men and women, insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and couches, that at the least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks and them who were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed, every one. And in these 5 verses, Mother says, which certainly come to us as a fragment of the testimony of this event, we see a number of keys. We see that the apostles and the close devotees together in harmony form the nucleus of energy of the power of the miracles. We see that it did not rest upon one soul, although Peter, as the vicar of Christ, was the focal point of the release of the energy. Nevertheless, others were healing with Peter. Peter, of course, always acknowledged that it was Jesus Christ who healed, and that God through Jesus made him the instrument. He never let himself or allowed himself to be part as an idol or a personality. And so from all that has preceded this in the book of Acts, the coming together of the people as a community, the surrendering of their substance, we see this coming together. And this is where we get into the teaching that we heard in the 9 o'clock hour that Mother gave on the atom cells electrons, a beautiful green decree 5002. We see this coming together like the components of a nucleus of an atom, packing together an immense momentum of energy, force field, particles, centering into what we call a great central sun magnet. And these souls became a nucleus of such intense energy that they were the equivalent of a magnet. And they drew all of these people. And unto them was given by the Holy Spirit the authority to convey energy for the return of life to these souls. So this coming together of the church in every group, no matter what the denomination, ought to be the goal of our Christian service. We ought to see that the surrendering of those things of this world that separate us is our most important sacrifice upon the altar of the Lord, because a nucleus of energy must be formed, a nucleus so great that it can challenge armies, the nuclear weapons, nuclear power, all injustices, pollution of the planet, COVID virus, injustices in government, all that is transpiring throughout this planetary body in this hour. All of this can be counteracted by bands of souls coming together, says Mother, in a nucleus of light that refuses to be daunted and that will determine to be the fullness of that harmony that is required for the healing of the nations. And we come together in prayer vigils. We had a wonderful revisiting of the rosary to Enoch yesterday. We immersed ourselves in this teaching of Enoch and the judgment of the watchers at the end of that spiral. We came together, one cohesive unit, giving these prayers. We come together doing the Great Karmic Board novena, and we don't give up until we have the answer. We keep on keeping on. She says, if we are not willing to make the sacrifice which the early Christians made, we can be certain that the future of our earth as a viable ecosystem is very dim. Only the Christ and only God through Christ within us all can release the energy that can counteract the darkness of this earth. And so Stephen, if you don't know much about the apostle Stephen or the disciple, he was preaching to all of the people. It's another part from this Miracles in Jerusalem. So Stephen is preaching to all of this to the people. He's telling them what they're doing is wrong. It is obviously not popular. People don't like to hear what they're not doing correctly. They don't like to hear the truth. And we see that today. We see parents going to school board meetings when they have now been awakened to the fact of what their children are being taught in schools. Things that they would never even think of teaching them themselves. Things that are not the role of anyone besides a parent, at least. And we see the pushback when the truth becomes in the forefront. So Stephen was preaching some unpopular things. He was telling them they were just like the children of Moses and how they were doing all of the same things. And he was saying, you're just like they were. And so today the masses of the people are the same. And when they heard these things, this is how the people reacted. They were cut to the heart. Mother says, I'll say they were cut to the heart. There was nothing left of them. They were stripped of their garments, naked. They were torn to shreds, and they knew it. They went right to the very core of the hardness of their hearts, and he stripped them. And it says in Acts 7:54, and they gnashed on him with their teeth. Have you ever seen anyone so angry that their face shook, their body shook, their mouth shook, their teeth chattered, seething with anger? She says, when that energy comes upon people in resistance to the light, you can describe it by those words. But he, being full, this is from Acts 7:55 through 56, but he, being full of the Holy Spirit, looked up steadfastly into heaven, and he saw the glory of God and Jesus standing on the right hand of God, and said, behold, I see the heavens opened, and the Son of Man standing on the right hand of God. She goes on to explain what the right hand of God means. Have you ever wondered exactly? And she says, it means that the person of the Son of God is able to ascend to the right hand. The right hand means the place of power, the place of authority. The personification of God by Jesus has also been manifest by all the masters, Jesus, by Mary, his mother, by sons and daughters for eons and cycles have been moving toward God. In this particular manifestation, Jesus is focalizing his ascended master presence. He's arcing that presence in heaven on behalf of Stephen, who is witnessing unto him on earth. He says, I want you to burn, she says to us, and this is part of our assignment. I want you to burn this vision in your memory, because anytime you witness for God and fear not the rebuke of the idolatrous generation, you will have that same arc of current and that same presence. Ratnasambhava gave a teaching on this. Before I go on with that teaching, I'd like to just bring this up because I felt it was extremely important to know. In 1990, Ratnasambhava, in a dictation, Make Your Vows to God Harmony, he said, be wise and choose the flame of God Harmony and know it contains all others. For the definition of harmony is the harmonization of all rays of God. And therefore this flame of harmony is white fire, but the melody of rainbow rays and secret rays is often played across it as an angel who would run her hands over the harp or zither or other instruments of heaven. In this, then, you will see that God Harmony is the power, wisdom, and love to defeat every enemy of the Buddha, the Sangha, the Dharma, the Mother, and each and every bodhisattva and child of light, each chela and disciple and servant of God. Breathe in the flame of harmony, says Ratnasambhava. The out-breath of harmony, beloved, it's peace at last. Surrender unto harmony, no true resolution. Just an excerpt here about this arcing of light that this disciple of Jesus, this Saint Stephen, who was martyred, the first Christian martyr, he had this arcing of light from Jesus to him, and he stood on the right hand of God. And in order for us to also have that situation, Ratnasambhava gives us this instruction because he says, I could tell you that within these bodies know this ray and keep it, for I tell you there are unnamed, unknown cosmic beings waiting to literally rush in with their angels to assist you in all things that beset you. But they must stand behind a certain barrier, for around this earth there is a barrier of light that does not allow discord to transmit further to other systems or planetary bodies. And there are cosmic beings who by law may not enter and pass through that barrier around the earth. They may not step into a force field of discord. So how can we get that connection? He says the only way they may enter, beloved, is by your ray and arc, just as Saint Stephen, piercing through it, that maintains the tie to the central sun. So if you can visualize yourself in this egg, your auric egg, your tube of light, and you can see this light as a great beam coming from your heart, and you have given to you, and he says, I have given this night to you, this arc of this light. If the cosmic being can follow this arc to your heart, an auric egg that is sealed and maintained in love's sweet harmony, then the cosmic being may enter planet Earth through you and do those things that one longs to do to rescue the blessed. So it is your heart, your arc through the master, this opportunity. And you can ask for this dispensation of beloved Ratnasambhava to recreate this heart arc of light that penetrates through all density of the planet by the power of your heart flame. And going back to Stephen, what is said here, Mother goes on to teach about this. She says, if it does not come to pass that you see this arc of light with your physical eyes, the Lord Christ at the right hand of God, you can know in your heart that God is no respecter of persons. And if you are doing the work of Stephen, you have the protection which he had. I imagine Stephen was elevated as on a stage. If you've ever been on a stage speaking or acting or singing or whatever, or performing, and you know there's all those lights coming at you and you can't really see the audience. And that's a good thing because sometimes that's a little disconcerting. So Stephen is elevated at this point with this arc of light of Jesus. And he doesn't hear the crowd. They're very angry. They're hollering at him. They're screaming at him, blasphemies, you know. So at this point, Mother says, you can be absolutely convinced that Jesus Christ is standing over you and that the power of God is being conveyed to you. You can also be convinced that when you fail to give that witness, you have no backing whatsoever. When you withhold the word of righteousness and of truth, you stand alone. It says, behold, I see the heavens opened. It is though the inner sight of Stephen is stepped up. He sees the opening of octaves of spirit, and he sees them clearly and more powerfully than he sees the people, because he totally ignores the people. He's totally caught up in this vision. And then they cried out with a loud voice. This is the people around Stephen, and stopped their ears and ran upon him with one accord. Acts 7:57. Mother says, this is interesting. When you think of harmony as peace and goodwill and the will of God and beauty, she says that they were in harmony. Those people who assailed him, they were in harmony and they were at peace with one another. They all agreed in their betrayal and their murder. They acted as one body and one being, and they descended upon him to destroy the anchor point for that power of God. From Acts 7:58 through 59, and cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their clothes at a young man's feet, whose name was Saul. And they stoned Stephen, calling upon God and saying, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. And as he was stoned, Stephen prayed those words, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. And as he kneeled down and cried with a loud voice, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he had said this, he fell asleep. From Acts 7:60. I know we're getting short on time, but we started a little bit late. So I like to get this one more teaching in here. I like to recognize the cohesion of a spiritual community. And I was listening to a radio program the other day, and I heard a lieutenant, 3-star lieutenant general, speak of a group that he started, and it's called Freedom Square. And that Freedom Square is about upholding the traditional values of the United States of America. And I found it very interesting about what he said, because he is so troubled as to what is happening in this hour, especially around the very traditional values of our American military. It's like the last bastion of freedom. And the name of this general was Jerry Boykin. And so as he spoke about the truth and the concern of the steady decline of the morale of our current military due to Marxists and communists and socialist values infiltrating this last bastion of traditional values in the military, the general spoke about something that I thought was very important, and I ran to write it down. All great military leaders know in regards to the importance of morale in our military men and women. And we too, onward Christian soldiers, we too are working as God's army. We work with all of our first responders, our military men and women. And he said, you can give a soldier the finest munition technology, the finest items that can be produced by mankind, and you give him an edge on the battlefield. But no thing gives him greater edge than the cohesion of the unit he is in. The cohesion of the unit is the deciding factor for all victory. The cohesion of the unit is the deciding factor for all victory. The cohesion of the apostles, the nucleus of the atom, the electrons of all those who were attracted, magnetized to those apostles. It was a small group, but hundreds and thousands were magnetized to that small group, that nucleus of the atom. That is the power of the cohesion of the unity of God harmony, coming together for a common cause.